All right. Welcome to your personalized deep dive.
Oh, this is exciting.
Today, we're going to be tackling
Let's do it.
a fascinating figure,
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
It's a big one.
It is a big one.
Yeah.
You've given us a pretty widespread of sources, I got to say.
Yeah, you really went all out.
You've got interviews with Lex Fridman, Theo Vaughn, Dave Ramsey, and Flagrant.
Wow. That's
We've got an all-in podcast snippet
okay.
and even a video script outline. So,
That is thorough.
yeah, we're really going to be able to dive in deep.
It's a goldmine of Trump in his own words.
Yeah.
Across all these different contexts, it's going to be interesting to see what we can learn about him.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Our mission, I guess, is to extract those little nuggets of insight. You know, those fascinating details that help us understand the man, his views, his experiences.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump in and start unpacking this, shall we? In a Lex Fridman interview, Trump claims that successful business people often they sort of choke when they try to jump into politics.
Interesting.
And he specifically blames public speaking.
Huh.
Do you think there's any truth to that?
Well, there's definitely a difference between, boardroom skills
Right.
and captivating a nation.
Right.
But Trump clearly believes he's got that charisma.
Oh, absolutely.
He even told Lex he could hold an audience for 90 minutes without anyone leaving.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Classic Trump.
Classic Trump. Yeah, that confidence, it bleeds into everything, even how he sees deal-making.
Which he also discussed with Lex.
He did.
It's all about figuring out the individual. And sometimes he says that the stick works better than the carrot.
Interesting.
That's
fascinating because it really mirrors his foreign policy approach.
Oh, tell me more.
He loves to boast about ending the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, that controversial Russian project to supply gas to Europe. And he claims that he pressured NATO allies into, getting tougher and using military threats to manage the Taliban during his presidency.
Wow.
It's all about leverage and force, it seems.
It's like that Wharton classmate he told Theo Vaughn about. You remember?
Oh, yeah. What about him?
The guy who hated scotch,
Okay.
but chugged it, thinking it was like the key to business success,
Oh, God.
only to become an alcoholic later on.
Wow.
Makes you wonder if Trump forces himself to do things he dislikes,
Right.
just for strategic gain.
It makes you wonder, what does he actually enjoy versus what's calculated? It's hard to tell.
It is. It's a good question.
But let's shift gears a little bit to a more personal side, if you will.
Right.
Trump spoke about his brother, Fred Jr., who struggled with alcoholism. And he even told Dave Ramsey that if he drank, he'd likely have a problem too.
Oh, wow. That's pretty heavy stuff.
It is, especially given,
Especially given his brother's struggles. Yeah.
It adds another layer of complexity to him, don't you think?
I think so, yeah. He could be so boastful and aggressive 1 minute.
Right.
And then suddenly introspective the next.
Yeah, exactly. It's fascinating.
Very complex guy.
We see this again with the whole deep state thing,
Yeah, yeah.
The All In podcast discusses Trump's belief in this hidden network working against him.
Right.
And his actions as president, firing FBI figures like Comey and McCabe. It kind of seems to support that.
Yeah, it does make you wonder.
Right.
Is it truly a deep state orchestrating everything?
Yeah.
Or is it just Trump going after anyone he sees as an enemy?
Well, for our listener who might not be familiar with this,
Yeah, good point.
how would you explain this whole deep state concept?
It's a good question.
The idea is that these entrenched bureaucrats, they're manipulating things from the shadows, regardless of who's elected.
Wow.
It's a controversial idea. Some believe these career officials just want to maintain their power, while others see it as a full-blown conspiracy theory.
Right.
Trump's actions could be read either way. He could genuinely believe there's a plot against him.
Yeah.
Or he could just be using this deep state idea to justify his own moves.
Yeah, that's true.
It's hard to say for sure.
Okay, well, let's step away from the serious stuff for a second.
Sorry.
Back to some lighter fare,
Okay.
Remember that bit in the Lex Fridman interview where Trump admits that he gets in trouble more for reposting stuff on Truth Social
Oh, yeah.
than for his own words?
Yeah, I remember that.
He doesn't even vet the groups he boosts.
He said the reposts are the ones that really get you in trouble.
It's pretty funny.
It's ironic considering he criticizes mainstream media bias,
Right.
Yet he's uncritically sharing content from who knows where on his own platform.
It's very Trumpian.
Very Trumpian.
Speaks to his impulsiveness, I think.
Yeah.
Which has always been part of his brand, you know.
It's true.
But it's potentially dangerous, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, you're amplifying misinformation without even checking it.
Exactly. We see that lack of filter in the Joe Rogan interview, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he insists that Rogan isn't a Kamala person, even though they've never even discussed it.
Wow.
And he constantly attacks Kamala Harris's intelligence. But it seems more like he's just projecting his own opinions onto Rogan.
It's a classic Trump tactic.
It is.
You know, the disparaging nicknames, questioning intelligence.
Yeah.
It's often unfair, but it's surprisingly effective.
It's true.
Speaking of tactics, what about his stance on immigration from that Joe Rogan interview?
Okay, so
Mass deportation for criminals, concern about immigrants from mental institutions and prisons.
right, that aligns with his broader policies, the wall, the zero tolerance policy at the border.
Right.
These were all huge flashpoints during his presidency.
Yeah, and he even specifically talked about, you know, deporting criminals and people from mental institutions and expressing concern about immigrants from specific countries like Congo.
And this isn't just policy.
Right.
It's rhetoric that shaped the national conversation.
Yeah, good point. It's not just about what he did.
Right.
It's about how he talked about it.
Exactly.
You know, it created a climate where immigrants felt targeted,
Absolutely.
vulnerable, regardless of their legal status.
And that's something we can't ignore.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's easy to get lost in the political back and forth.
Right.
But for a lot of people, this was about their lives, their families.
Absolutely. Okay. Well,
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Donald Trump.
all right. Picking up where we left off.
Right. In part one, we kind of explored his personality.
Yeah, that blend of confidence and contradiction
Exactly.
makes for an interesting guy.
It does. But now let's shift gears a little
Okay.
and analyze the policies that actually shaped his presidency.
Okay, sounds good.
You mentioned earlier his stick over carrot approach, and that really comes through in his trade policies.
Yeah, big.
He always slammed trade deals, saying they hurt American workers.
Right.
And as president, he slapped tariffs on goods from China and other countries.
This is a big part of his platform.
Those tariffs were a gamble, some would say.
Oh, absolutely.
Some economists argue they just raised prices for everyday Americans.
Yeah.
And hurt our businesses.
Right.
Others say they were essential to protect jobs and force other countries to play fair.
Yeah, I remember in the All In podcast excerpt,
Yes.
he talked about using tariffs to bring China to the negotiating table.
He did.
Remember that?
Yeah, he even bragged that China was afraid of him.
Right.
Because he wasn't afraid to use tariffs as a weapon.
Right. But what did those tough tactics actually achieve?
That is the question.
You know, those concessions he claims he won, did they actually materialize?
That's the million-dollar question. Economists and historians will be debating that for years to come.
Probably.
And it's not just about tariffs, right?
No.
His 2017 tax cut bill, which lowered taxes for corporations and individuals, that also sparked some pretty fierce debate.
Big time.
Republicans claimed it would turbocharge the economy, while Democrats warned it would mostly benefit the wealthy and balloon the deficit.
So did the economy boom?
Well, the economy did grow after the tax cuts.
Okay.
But it's hard to isolate their exact impact.
Right.
And yes, the deficit did increase,
Okay.
which raised concerns about the long-term effects of his fiscal policies.
Interesting.
It seems like a lot of his policies were just aimed at shaking things up, whether it was trade or taxes.
Yeah.
And that definitely applies to his stance on immigration,
Oh, absolutely.
which was central to his campaign and his presidency.
Yeah.
The wall on the U.S.-Mexico border,
Right.
the zero tolerance policy, these were huge flashpoints.
Absolutely.
He even talked about it on Joe Rogan, remember?
Oh, yeah.
About deporting criminals and people from mental institutions.
Right.
And expressing concern about immigrants from specific countries like the Congo.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't just policy.
Yeah.
It's rhetoric that shaped the national conversation.
Absolutely. Right. It's not just about what he did,
Exactly.
but how he talked about it.
Right.
You know, it created a climate where immigrants felt targeted.
Absolutely.
Vulnerable.
Regardless of their legal status.
Yeah, and that's something we can't ignore.
We can't.
All right, well, moving on. Foreign policy.
This is where things get really interesting.
This is where things get unpredictable.
Unpredictable is a good word.
Pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal,
Yeah.
the Paris Climate Agreement,
Mm-hmm.
slapping sanctions on Iran and North Korea, meeting with Kim Jong-un and Putin.
It was a whirlwind.
It was a whirlwind.
Some praised him for being bold and decisive,
Right.
while others saw it as reckless, potentially damaging America's global standing.
Right.
He made some big claims like ending the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which was this controversial project for Russia to supply natural gas to Europe.
Right. And remember, he told Lex Fridman he strengthened NATO
He did.
and kept the Taliban in check with military threats during his time in office.
A lot of tough talk.
A lot of tough talk. But did it actually work?
That's the challenge with foreign policy.
Yeah.
It's hard to measure the ripple effects,
Right.
especially in the short term.
Right.
But even with all these global issues, he never let go of his promise to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act.
Oh, yeah, Obamacare.
Obamacare, right?
That was a major campaign promise.
It was.
And despite multiple attempts, he couldn't get it done.
He couldn't.
So Obamacare is still the law of the land.
It is.
Healthcare is just incredibly complex.
It is.
And deeply politicized.
So politicized.
Which makes having a reasonable discussion about improving it
I know.
incredibly difficult.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
what's the takeaway for our listener?
Yeah, what do Trump's policies tell us about his approach to leadership?
I think we see a pattern of disruption and a focus on immediate visible action.
Right.
Whether you agree with the results or not,
Yeah.
there's no denying he shook things up
Yeah.
on trade, taxes,
Yeah.
immigration, foreign policy,
Yeah.
even healthcare.
Wow. Yeah.
You've seen the concrete actions, the successes and failures.
Absolutely.
But now, in part 3,
Okay.
we need to zoom out a little and explore the broader implications of the Trump presidency for America's future.
I'm ready. Let's do it. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Donald Trump. It's been a ride.
It has.
We've explored his personality. We've gone through his policies.
Dissected them.
And now I think it's time to tackle the biggest question of all.
The big one.
What does the Trump phenomenon tell us about America?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, Trump's rise to power.
Yeah.
This wasn't just some, random event.
Right.
It exposed these cracks in American society
Yeah.
that had been widening for decades, really.
Absolutely.
He tapped into this wellspring of anger, resentment, this sense that the political elite, they'd forgotten about everyday people.
It's like what he said to Lex Fridman, right?
Oh, yeah, about
business people choking when they try to enter politics.
Right. He contrasted that with his own ability to command a room, to connect with people on a gut level.
You think he genuinely understood their frustrations?
I think it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
He positioned himself as this ultimate outsider, the disruptor, the guy who'd come in and flip the tables in Washington.
Yeah.
And that resonated with people who felt left behind.
Absolutely.
By globalization, by economic shifts, by just the rapid pace of change.
It's bigger than just Trump himself.
It is.
Isn't it? It's about this rise of populism.
Yeah.
This idea that appeals to emotion,
right,
to gut feelings, can be more powerful than facts and logic.
Absolutely. Think about his campaign slogans, his speeches,
Yeah.
simple, powerful phrases.
Yeah.
They bypassed all those intellectual arguments, went straight for the heart.
And it worked.
And he never shied away from attacking his opponents either.
Oh, absolutely not.
Often in very personal and inflammatory ways.
It's kind of his signature move.
It was a strategy that, for better or worse, proved to be incredibly effective.
But it also raised serious concerns.
Oh, yeah.
About the health of our democracy.
Absolutely.
He constantly attacked the media, the judiciary, even his own intelligence agencies.
Right.
He sowed doubt about the legitimacy of elections.
Yeah.
He even seemed to encourage violence against his opponents at times.
It's what makes his presidency so challenging to analyze.
Yeah.
These weren't just policy disagreements. These were attacks on the fundamental norms and institutions that underpin American democracy.
Right.
It left a lot of people wondering if he was a threat to the system itself.
It's like that deep state idea.
Oh, right.
That we discussed.
Right.
Whether it's real or imagined, his belief in this shadowy network working against him, it fed his distrust of institutions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And his willingness to break the rules.
It's a dangerous combination.
It is, and it further polarized the country.
No doubt.
So where does that leave us now?
That's the big question.
What does this all mean for the future of America?
I mean, the divisions he exploited, they haven't just magically disappeared.
Right.
In fact, they might even be deeper now.
It's a scary thought.
It is. And the threat to democratic norms, it hasn't vanished either.
I think we're still grappling with the fallout. Trump's presidency forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths.
About ourselves.
About ourselves, about the fragility of our institutions.
Yeah.
About the power of resentment and division.
It's unsettling.
Remember in the Flagrant interview when he said he wanted his legacy to be Make America Great Again?
I do.
It's such a vague goal.
It is.
So open to interpretation.
But there's no denying his impact.
Absolutely not.
He shook things up, for better or worse.
He did.
He revealed these fault lines in our society and in our system of government.
And now it's up to us
to
decide what we do with that knowledge.
What do we do?
So for our listener today,
Yeah.
what's the takeaway?
What should they keep in mind?
As they navigate this complex world?
I think the key is to stay engaged.
Yeah.
Stay informed.
Absolutely.
Don't let the noise and the division drown out your own voice.
Good advice.
Understand the forces at play, populism, nationalism, the erosion of democratic norms. These are the challenges that are going to define our future, and they demand our attention.
We do.
This isn't about taking sides.
Right.
It's about understanding the arguments, the complexities, the stakes.
And most importantly,
Yeah.
it's about participating in the conversation.
Yes.
Making your voice heard.
Absolutely.
Fighting for the America you believe in.
Well said.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
But this isn't the end.
It's not.
It's just the beginning of a much larger conversation.
Exactly.
So keep learning.
Keep questioning.
Keep seeking out different perspectives.
That's what makes the deep dive so rewarding.
Absolutely.
On that note,
Yeah.
I think we'll wrap things up.
We'll wrap it up.
And until next time.
Stay curious.